Okay. Technical glitches to start it. Isn't that incredible? But we are back. All right. He just stepped away for a second. Okay. So, as I mentioned, Dan is a veteran of the U.S. Navy. Had an experience in 1969, which eventually led to his appearance and testimony as a witness in 2001 for the National Press Club when they had their disclosure hearing, Dr. Stephen Greer. Also a former ABC reporter. And he's, like I said, he's involved in so many things, and we're going to share some of that information on the screen. So, Dan, to start off, tell the folks a little bit about your background in the Navy and the relevancy to UAPs and ufology.
Sure. We're still frozen on the Rumble live feed. Is that got resolved yet?
Let me check. Yeah, it's frozen again. I don't know what's going on with Rumble because all the other streams are working fine because I can see them. It could be a Rumble issue.
You have a link for the other ones?
Yes, I can do that. Let me give that to you in Skype. I'll give you Twitch. You want all three or you want YouTube?
YouTube. Whatever's working. YouTube's fine.
Oh my gosh. All right, stand by. Now I gotta go to the page. So again, more technical issues. Yeah, I'll send it there.
Yeah. Well, while you're sending that link out, I had a high-level top-secret security clearance in naval communications and was receiving reports from U.S. Navy ships reporting craft coming out of the ocean. My testimony in 2001 was minor compared to what some of the other witnesses that I joined back in 2001 were revealing things like, let's see, I think we're... there we go.
So you might want to share that link if you want to right now, the YouTube one, because that's definitely working.
Okay, I switched over to YouTube. I'm seeing myself in time delay.
Yes.
I can't watch that.
No, you can't. But I can actually make this easier for you. I can actually screen share through Skype so you can see us in real time. Let us do that right now. That'll make it a little bit easier for you. This way you can see the conversation as it's going on my main screen. Okay, let's do that right now. Just bear with me.
We're live right now?
Oh, yes, we are live.
Oh, okay. Yeah, some of the things that were revealed back in May 9th, 2001, National Press Club, which 20... here we go.
You'll see that live now. I shared the screen with you on Skype, so you should be able to see us on Skype.
Yes, that's better.
Yeah.
What we were revealing back then was pretty explosive information. The technology in 2001 was a lot different than in 2023. There wasn't live streaming like we're doing now. In fact, only the National Press Club had a streaming avenue, which had about 500,000 people logged on. The NSA, we found out, jammed the first hour, which had explosive information regarding illegal secret government operations, President CIA directors being denied access, advanced technologies been suppressed. Some of the witness testimonies, like we had 57 different extraterrestrial species already categorized by 1989. NASA's airbrushing the UFOs out before releasing to the public. That we had faster-than-light craft that was built back in the 1950s. President, CIA directors being denied access. We had zero-point energy. We haven't needed nuclear oil or coal for like 70 years. We revealed all this, and each one of us stated that we're willing to testify under oath before congressional hearing. It was one of the largest events in the history of the National Press Club, 22 cameras in the back row. The place was packed with reporters. Myself being involved, being an ex-ABC newsman, I just thought, wow, my God, what we're disclosing, how could it possibly not be a world-changing event? But as I learned afterward, got a little education in 2001 as I started to research and found out that our media system's been infiltrated for a long time, and that they centrally control all the major networks, CNN, ABC, NBC, CBS, New York Times, all these different networks. And so what they did was they did a limited hangout, which means that they only hanged out the information that was safe to let the public know about, that made it appear that we wanted to have a congressional hearing on simply the reality of UFOs, but they omitted all the elements of illegal secret government operations. Now, Dr. Greer just recently did the conference of the National Press Club. Today, we have Rumble, YouTube, all the different streaming outlets, so they couldn't really jam it like they did back in 2001, so everybody got to see, some of the witness testimonies. I think they had, 6 or 7
yeah,
witnesses
I found it interesting,
there.
actually, Dan. It sounded a little bit like way out there for me, I'll be honest. And I will get into more specifics of some of those witnesses. I don't know if you've seen it. I did watch it.
I did. I saw the whole thing.
Okay, but before we get into that, what is the sources that provided the information that you gathered upon with all these different types of species and all this information? Where was it coming from? Because obviously it wasn't coming from any of the alphabet agencies or the Pentagon. So where was, except for obviously in 2001 when you were part of that disclosure panel, but where were you gathering this information from? What was your
witnesses? The witnesses that are willing to testify under oath, that had their credentials that were vetted. Such as Clifford Stone, who was involved in retrieval cases. You had Donna Hare, working with NASA, airbrushing UFOs out. You had Dr. Carl Wolf, who personally, firsthand witnessed the bases on the other side of the moon. On and on. You have they're not going to reveal this information. Only it's interesting how this whole thing came about. The history of it. Why did this even happen? It happened because if you go back, we have to go through a history lesson, but I'll make it ultra condensed and short. Basically, the Nazis did infiltrate into our intelligence community. They continued on with their operations, which include drugs and trafficking and everything, which continue on to today. Like one of the U.S. Marine Corps witnesses that Dr. Greer testified, where they're bringing in trafficking people, they're bringing in drugs, weapons, and so forth. This has been going on for decades. Even when I was served in combat action in Vietnam, they were doing that. Captain Friend saw all the drugs that were being, airlifted out of there. Nothing new there. What happened was, ever since President Eisenhower basically lost control back in the mid-50s, they basically have these illegal operations, meaning they're not overseen by our legal constitutional government. And so they have these reverse engineering operations going on, like at Area 51 S4, for example. I was actually meeting with Robert Lazar back in 1993 and videotaped it with a group of researchers. And it turned out that this was right outside of Area 51, and the base went into a complete lockdown because of this meeting. And so they put out a NRO security advisory that had a distribution list that listed unacknowledged special access programs such as Cosmic Ops and Magi Ops that were doing the reverse engineering on the extraterrestrial craft.
I just got to stop you there for 1 second, Dan, because you touched on
Yeah,
someone, a very controversial figure, Bob Lazar. And I spoke to some people that I cannot reveal their name, but they told me, well, the person told me, Bob Lazar definitely was part of Area 51 S4. So in your opinion, was he, because so many people question the authenticity of his background, his character, and just him being there. So in your opinion, was he there working?
Oh, yeah. I totally believe in the validity of Bob Lazar. They tried to erase him, but he was still in the phone book. They couldn't erase all the phone books, right? His testimony, I recorded the whole thing when it was about 2 hours of fairly savvy researchers hitting him nonstop with questions for 2 hours. And his testimony has stayed 100% consistent over the decades. We know operations are going
Overt.
on there. In fact, the document that was the security advisory that was issued because of this meeting that was happening outside, Dr. Greer was able to acquire and brought it into a Pentagon meeting, which he spoke of at the recent meeting, a conference meeting, that he met with Vice Admiral Thomas Wilson. And
wow, he did.
he was head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So he's a very high level of need to know. And he was denied access. In fact, he wasn't even only denied access; he was threatened. He said they told him if he didn't drop the matter immediately, he would see an early retirement and lose rank. And so he was mad as hell. And so he told Dr. Greer, well, if you can get your people together, you have my permission to go to the mainstream, that are willing to testify under oath. You have my permission to go to the mainstream media with this. This group is, quote, illegal. So how this all came about was back in 1993 also, President Clinton wanted to look into the UFO matter. And so he had his CIA director, James Woolsey, try to look into it. The CIA director is denied access. Everybody's been denied access ever since Eisenhower.
Is this because what, like they said at I heard the term, they're just temporarily there. They're just in service for a limited time. They're not given any information, because that was something that was said by the whistleblower.
I'm sure, absolutely.
I mean,
part of it.
They're only there for a little time as in a role before they're a civilian again, and they, So I think that has a lot to do with it, Dan.
I'm sure that's very much, part of the whole picture of the whole thing. But anyway, he brought Dr. Stephen Greer in, who was at the time the director for the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence, who brought a huge stack of papers into a 3-hour meeting substantiating the reality. And CIA director told him, I know the subject's real. I'm just trying to figure out why the hell I can't gain access to it. He's being director of Central Intelligence. So Dr. Greer became aware of the situation back in 93. And so he met with some military advisors who advised him to start collecting witnesses. And so from 1993 to 2001, I got over 500 military intelligence witnesses. I was the 100th videotaped witness. And, how many really do you need that are willing to testify under oath before a congressional hearing?
Were they retired, or were some still in service? Because it seems like most of them come out and talk after they retire, obviously. Not when they're currently.
Some were active. The majority, I believe, were, retired. So with all, you can imagine, you've got not only military of the different services, but you have intelligence operatives, and then you also have corporate contractors for the government. And so you have a wide that all are corroborating, that is revealing this hidden world that the public has no idea is going on.
Now, a lot of people also question Dr. Greer's background, and I just want to put this, right here on the record. So he was in contact with military personnel. He did have meetings with different individuals. You know, because a lot of people say he didn't meet anyone. You know, he didn't meet anyone in government to discuss what was going on behind the scenes. Actually, it seems like a small portion of a hidden government within the government that were doing things on the dark side. Let's just say, probably with money that was taken from all different places. That was part of the $20,000 toilet seat, and a lot of that money was allocated to this black ops project or projects.
Yeah, well, the admiral was quite pissed, and when he retired in 2002, he met at the EG&G building with astrophysicist Dr. Eric Davis in the admiral's limo, and apparently he recorded the conversation with him. And this conversation got transcribed later, and it was famously leaked as the Admiral Wilson memo,
yes,
which was Representative Mr. Gallagher brought up in the last UFO UAP Senate hearing, which interestingly enough, the intelligence operatives that were in charge of understanding all this stuff, they weren't even aware of this. So it almost seems as though they're put in place to support a narrative, but they don't really do the research. But it's a hot potato, which it revealed that we were working on technology that was not of this world, and that Admiral Wilson was not on what they call the bigot list. And the bigot list is a list of people that are, it doesn't matter what your security clearance is, or, you're the president or the king of Romania or whoever you are. It doesn't matter. If you're not on this list, you're not going to have access. And so they've been keeping these operations secret for many decades.
But here's the problem. If it's that secret, how is Congress going to get their hands on any information if something is withheld? I mean, the whistleblower was saying he had a classification, a top secret classification of 50, I believe the number was. I believe that a lot of congressmen and women do not have that classification. So let's say they have a hearing. How are they going to provide any evidence, any documents, anything that's coming from the legacy project? That's the name I believe it's called, that the whistleblower was referring to. So how are we going to see documents, images, or maybe, hopefully, the people that he was talking about, David Grush, that was providing him information, will appear as well in a hearing? Because honestly, Dan, I don't think it could just be him, because it's going to be just hearsay. The public is going to be like, here we go, no transparency. We're not learning anything new here. It's just he's making claims. Yes, he's under oath with threat of perjury. And
yeah, I didn't see anybody in 2001. The witnesses, each one of them stated after they gave their testimony that I am willing to testify under oath before a congressional hearing. They stated, each one of them.
Yep.
I didn't hear that going on in the recent one, but I'm sure they would.
Well, supposedly,
you're right, Bill. They're not going to. This stuff's not going to come out unless it's like Ben Rich said, take an act of God and get this out to humanity.
Dan, if it's that top secret that a lot of people within government don't even know about, you think they're going to reveal it and declassify it and show it to the public? They're all going to say this is national security and it has to be discussed in a classified setting. But do they even have the clearance? Maybe the Gang of Eight has the clearance in Congress, but a lot of those people, there's freshmen in there. I mean, do they have the classification to look at these type of documents? I mean, if they're so high up there in classification, I don't even know in a classified setting if they're going to find out the information. But thus the Whistleblower Act that was enacted, to me, it's really, they're going to come out anyway. The names, people put out their names before they even become public. So are they truly protected from any kind of retribution or attacks or threats? When you came out, did you face any issues? That you were part of that?
I don't have a. My testimony is, I consider it kind of minor compared to what the other witnesses were disclosing.
But still, you're part
UFOs and alien bases under the ocean that are coming in and out of there. No big deal. Everybody's aware of that, right?
I think a vast majority.
But this was 1969,
Yeah.
and I was in charge of the code room, and a message came through one of the ships off the coast of Alaska, and it's coming in through Morse code channel, typing it out. It's primitive stuff. It's like, but it's the only modality that could get the signal through. So the teletypes were going gibberish, right? But you can get the signal through with a Morse code operator. And so, he handed it off to the communications watch officer and went on to Washington, D.C., the chief of naval operations. Those are rare. It's like I took thousands of messages, during the years that I worked there. So that was like that one almost burned an image in the back of my head. And I almost, for a moment, thought, I'm going to take this over to the Xerox machine, maybe make a copy. But then I was facing 10 years in prison, $10,000 fine if I did something like that. But I remembered enough of the information that after the conference, I contacted the Office of Naval Intelligence, and I put a freedom of information request because I had enough information to see if they could dig up the files, but they said that, and I still have the letter from them, that the ship's logs are destroyed after a certain amount of time. So, I couldn't, unlike the other witnesses, like John Callahan, who were the CIA, swore him to secrecy. They had this huge UFOs, like 5 times the size of the 747, and he had all the radar and computer printouts, and the CIA confiscated it all. And they swore everybody to secrecy, but he had backups of everything. And he brought all the backups. And then you have Captain Robert Sala, who was in charge, nuclear launch officer, 10 nuclear tip ICBMs, red glowing UFO comes over. The guards up topside are freaking out with their weapons drawn.
Didn't it disarm it? Didn't it disarm the nukes? I believe it did. The warheads.
It shut them all down.
It shut them down.
Rapid succession. They all went down, And then you have, he brought all the Office of Special, Air Force Office of Special Investigation documents to prove that. Also, Naval Commander Graham Bethune, who was sitting next to me and I had lunch with, and I didn't realize that he was Admiral Byrd's pilot that flew him down one of the times to Antarctica, and had an incredible background, this man. He brought all of the Office of Naval Intelligence documents that showed he was flying over Newfoundland, and this UFO came out of the ocean and was like a light. He could see it looked like a city down below in the ocean. He was flying, and then all of a sudden, whoop! He had to nose dive the aircraft to avoid hitting it. And,
wow! So it rose out of the ocean.
Story he shared.
It rose out of the ocean.
Oh yeah, within seconds. Whoop! It was right there with him.
Wow.
He had a funny story. There was a psychiatrist that was on board. Everybody was, next to the windows on the aircraft, looking at it, right? And the psychologist said, "I don't want to look at it. I don't believe in that."
I don't want to see it. I don't want to know. I'm in denial.
So it's a matter of, the mainstream media, which I took a keen interest in why they are sanitizing this information to not gather the public's attention to some of these explosive. Now, it inspired a lot of people, like my friend Dr. Michael Salla and so forth, that they started looking into it. Hey, all these people making up stuff and are willing to testify under oath and breaking national security oaths and everything. The probability is pretty unlikely. It inspired also a hacker, Gary McKinnon, in the UK,
NASA.
who found the solar ward in the U.S. Navy's secret space program. They wanted to put the poor guy away for 70 years in prison, and he wasn't making that up either.
Or Snowden. Snowden released a couple of things related to it too, on UAPs, UFOs.
Yeah, Snowden. Interesting. The documents he released from GCHQ, which is our NSA in the UK, and all the techniques that they use in order to manipulate the public's perceptions on this thing. And that's key. They've been keeping this under the wraps for a long time. We've been under this bubble, unless you go back and spend a lot of time like I have over the decades, looking at all these authenticated classified documents, looking at all what these witness testimonies are saying, and you start assembling it together. It starts to put together, not to say that you have the total answer, right? But you have an indication of a high probability of what's going on. And from what I can see is that there was some things that happened at the end of World War II that the public isn't fully aware of, that, beyond
I
Operation
believe
Paperclip.
a lot of people that are involved or are familiar with the ufology, even though that the UFO, are familiar with Operation Paperclip and stuff like that. And a lot would also know the Battle of LA with the spotlights going on and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the problem that I have. As of 2017, when it broke in the New York Times, Leslie Kean, with the Tic Tac, up to now, it seems like the MSM, the mainstream media, is starting to pay more attention to the topic. But here's the there's a catch-22 here. Is this part of the mainstream-driven agenda, a narrative that they want to provide to the public, almost like a slow drip, 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 just to keep them informed about what's going on regarding the topic? Or, as some may say, this is part of a PSYOP, disinformation campaign for something else. So what do you think about that?
I think that's an excellent question, Bill. Anything comes out of the New York Times, if you understand.
But it is Leslie Kean. Come on, she's pretty.
Yeah. I know Leslie well. I stayed at her place. I provided the documents that I
she's like the exception
talking about earlier to her. Anything that comes out of the New York Times is like pretty much green lighted by the elements that want to direct the perception in a particular way. And so, when you have the USS Nimitz Tic Tac that came out, it was saturated across all the medias back in 2017, like you mentioned. So even your grandmother, knows about the Tic Tac. Everybody made sure
Tucker Carlson, everybody was talking about it.
Aware of this,
yeah, right? Everybody was talking about it. Anderson Cooper, Tucker, it was everywhere.
Everywhere. And so Leslie Kean comes out with this latest, in the New York Times, again. The Tic Tac thing, I just, on a side note, it's kind of interesting that back in 2021, Mike Tuber, Air Force intelligence operative, he initially gave a testimony in saying that the Tic Tac was actually U.S. technology.
I'm going to touch on that. Dan, go ahead. And then
in it was like April of 2021, he comes out with his YouTube and saying, I just made the whole thing up. There's nothing to it. Just ignore it. It's just a psychological test I was doing, right? Very suspicious.
That is a flag, and I don't accept the latter as an explanation.
Yeah, exactly, Bill. And then 1 week later, what happens? My good friend, Mark McCandish, who was the one who revealed that we had this alien reproduction vehicles back in the 1950s, he commits suicide, right? And he was planning on testifying at the June 2021 UAP UFO Senate hearing.
Mm-hmm.
And what do both of those testimonies reveal? They reveal that we have this technology. And as you know, regarding, the false flag alien invasion idea, which,
but Dan, I don't mean to interrupt you, but if you think about the narrative that's out there with the globalist control, the one world order, if there was something on that kind of a scale that was done, you don't think that would bring world governments together and say, okay, we have our differences, we need to put a pause on all this because we have a bigger threat? You don't think that's a possibility to bring that globalist
like, Ronald Reagan and Clinton and all these people, we'd dissolve our differences and unite the world to fight this alien foe.
Reagan said it in the UN. He said it in the UN.
Yes, true. So, we have indications they had that plan going back to 1967, a report from Iron Mountain, which LBJ freaked out that this got leaked, but they were talking about, you can imagine if Nazi Germany had anti-gravity 1934 operational, and we had it, as Dr. Greer mentioned in the recent conference, that we had it by October of 1954. If we had anti-gravity, we'd have the technology in order to pull something like that off, right? Mm-hmm. And so
it could be our own.
report from Iron Mountain back in 1967 was talking about fabricating a threat from outer space. And then you have 1977, Wernher von Braun dying from cancer on his deathbed, revealed the plans that he was read into about, that the last card would be the hoaxed alien invasion, and actually everything's been rolling out exactly like he said the plans would be, because the next one in line was a terrorist event. This was May of 2001. And you know what happened in September of 2001. And then the next one on the list was rogue nations. And we know about North Korea, Iran, and so forth. And so, it's moving on. And then you have Hillary Clinton, who's the Bilderberg meeting choice in Germany back then to be the president. And you have Donald Trump, who some generals met back in 2015 to have him run for president. And so there was this big concern by the Clintons Foundation that there was going to be this mass turnout for Trump and that she would lose. And so they subcontract. Now this was an anonymous hack that got leaked out through WikiLeaks, that the Clinton Foundation hired the Benson Strategy Group to try to figure out how to create this huge distraction to keep the Trump voters from voting. And they had a number of different scenarios. And the one that was the most was an faked alien invasion, which was 38%. And it was using something called fire sign, which was a holographic type of technology. So, this whole fake alien invasion has been popping up, through the decades. And, but I think too many people are waking up to that. I don't think they were going to try to pull something like that off. And there's been a lot of things that have changed. There's a couple narratives going on here, Bill. One, you hear it all over the place. You hear it with certain people in the media and everything talking about an alien threat. You've heard that a lot,
of course.
Right?
Or the demon threat. They're demons, or it's always the negative. It's not the benevolent. It's the malevolent kind. It's the fear porn involved in it.
Right. It's this alien threat. The History Channel even did a did a whole special on, Chris Mellon and Luis Elizondo, and the list. They're all with the same dialogue narrative talking about the alien threat. And then you have Dr. Stephen Greer, who I've known, prior to 2001. His narrative has been consistent in that he believes there are no malevolent extraterrestrials, no hostile entities in the galaxy, and that people who are coming out as witnesses that are saying they've experienced, a hostile extraterrestrial, he says that they've been given false screen memories. Now, they have the technology to put in a false screen memory, so that technology does exist, but there are so many witnesses, and I've been researching the secret space program witnesses since the first ones came out that started to have total memory recall back in 2001, like Michael Ralph, and I know many of them have experienced regressive or hostile extraterrestrials, and they're not all with fake memory implants. So it's always been a question. I know Dr. Greer's rationale is kind of like you don't want to go and say there's bad ETs out there because then the industrial military complex, which Eisenhower warned us about, will jump all over that and say, yes, we have bad ETs, and here they are. They're coming to and take over our planet.
But they're the ones that have all the technology right now, or maybe some, or maybe none. Maybe this is like a band of scientists that are working on these retrieved crashed vehicles. But I would think the military has to be on it. Some of the subcontractors that work for the military definitely have to be part of this. No, Dan? Would you think that they would? They have to be.
If you're read into
the military industrial complex.
Into the project. Now, I've been researching witnesses for a long time, and on my website that it's kind of a chronology of documents and witnesses, and the webmatrix.net.
Let's share
people
that.
Can reference and look it up. I did an analysis on a friend of mine who was abducted by hostile extraterrestrials when she was 9 years old, and they had to repurpose an implant. So she's been in direct communication with the Galactic Federation of Worlds. If you remember, the head of the Israeli space program, Professor Ashed, I think I'm pronouncing it correctly, talked about the Galactic Federation and that they're here. And a recent, Greg Braden did an interview with John Peterson, who heads the U.S. Navy think tank in Washington, D.C., called the Arlington Institute. And he had 3 independent sources that told him that the regressive extraterrestrials have all been removed from our solar system back in 2021, which is exactly what Elena Danaan, described as happening. And I've been looking at the corroboration of her information, so I'm very much in tune with. There's so many elements that she reveals. Like she did a book, 110 different extraterrestrial species. She was given access to the Galactic Federation database and showed where their planets are, what they look like. She's an incredible artist. And things like she knew in Proxima Centauri there was 3 planets in which these beings came from. And NASA didn't know that until 2 years later, until they had the ability to look deeper into space and confirmed exactly like she said.
It sounds like the Betty Hill incident as well. She's seen a star system, and it was determined that existed years later, confirmed by NASA. Same thing.
And Thorhan reveals, watch for Neptune. Everybody's going to be watching Neptune in the next week or so. Sure enough, Neptune starts to unexpectedly start heating up in the South Pole because of these space arcs that are in our solar system that are being activated. There's like 500 motherships that are parked behind Jupiter right now. And Intergalactic Confederation and the Galactic Federation of Worlds are here in our solar system. And so, and also she Thorhan was communicating to her that they were doing terraforming operations on Mars because the Nazis and the reptilians have been purged out of Mars, and so they're terraforming the operations there. And he says to her, there's a huge earthquake that happened. Right after that, NASA, and there's no way for her to know this, reports the largest quake ever recorded in the solar system on Mars. They have a seismometer on Mars. So there's things that you just can't make up, right?
Even though a lot of people that are watching this will say that this sounds incredibly far-fetched.
Oh, if I was to hear myself talking 20 years ago, I would say, my God,
just something out of science fiction
or something. Yeah,
it's like way out there. But here's the thing, and there's so many things, and I don't want to keep you too long, but if they're there,
there's so much more to tell.
There really is so much to talk about. But if they're there, sitting behind the planet in our solar system, why are they not making themselves known on Earth? What is it? What is it that's stopping them?
There's a real thing called the Prime Directive, and Gene Roddenberry was connected with the Office of Naval Intelligence, and they actually gave him the Prime Directive. Much of the script of Star Trek was part of a plan to seed these concepts and ideas into the public mind. So the Prime Directive is a real thing. It's a non-interference. And so, I find it interesting that you have this group called the Alien Threat Group, and then there's Dr. Greer believes all the extraterrestrials are good. Well, there's a lot of benevolent ones. There's no question about that. But the Greys of the Nibu, which have been neutralized, thank God, and the Dracos of the Sakaar Empire, which have a massive empire across the galaxy, they have been removed from our solar system. These situations, we did have hostile extraterrestrials prior to 2021 into our solar system. So now the minions on Earth, that they're extraterrestrial overlords, are now like running with chickens with their head cut off as they're getting exposed left and right. And it seems as though, the public is starting to wake up that something's not quite right here. And the only other group that I can think of that says all extraterrestrials are good is a very large religious institution out of Rome. It starts with the letter V. That it says, the extraterrestrials are brother, and that, so it's
open the vaults, Dan. Open the vaults. We want to see what's in those vaults. They must be hiding a bunch. You know that.
Oh, for sure.
But and when we're talking about benevolent, malevolent, the whistleblower mentioned. Now you just talked about possibility of hostile species. The whistleblower mentioned Ross Coulthart, who did a great interview, I thought. Mentioned, have they murdered any humans in the past? And between
a lot of them. Donna Hare wrote me a private letter. Said she had her life threatened. Somebody was trying to kill her. Outside of the internet, she sent it to me in the mail, so it wouldn't be intercepted. And she died of a fast-acting cancer. You have Carl Wolf, who revealed the bases on the moon. He was on his bicycle, and a big truck came around and killed him. You have the story of Mark McCandish, what happened with him. So a lot of things happen to people,
and researchers
news.
Dan, into like new energy sources, free energy, 0 point.
Oh, well, I had 10 years of experience with that. I volunteered to be a technical advisor because of my technical background. I met for 10 years scientists and inventors around the world that, just people being murdered, national security orders, cars being blown up. I did a show with Dr. Michael Salla on that.
Houses being set on fire, agents going in and confiscating all their research.
Oh, yeah, it's a long history of it.
It
Ever
is.
since the Invention Secrecy Act, 1951, thousands of inventions have been suppressed to keep our planet technologically hijacked. But the good news, Bill, is that the Galactic Federation of Worlds, Thorhan Eredyon, who's Elena Danan's contact, gave in the Raven Rock complex, it's an underground military complex in, I think it's Virginia, that gave the plan for disclosure to the head of the Earth Alliance, one of them anyway, General Van Herk, who's head of the North American Air Command. And what that's going to be is that, and it's happening right now, is that we're going to start seeing more of their craft in our skies. In fact, it's going to help acclimate the public to eventually you got to psychologically ease it in, right?
I've been saying that.
We're going to have contact. But I don't think it's going to happen until the deep state minions that are left, they're reptilian and otherwise overlords, are now out of the solar system. We have a huge invincible force that's protecting Earth right now.
So there's two things that you brought up just based on what you just said for the last few minutes. That must mean that we have an agreement with species of extraterrestrials.
Totally.
Okay. Now, just on that one point, are they allowing people to be abducted and taken, and as the whistleblower said, in some cases, murdered by extraterrestrials? Is that part of the agreement in exchange for technology? I mean, why would there be such an agreement like that?
What you're talking about is what happened back in 1954 in February, where President Eisenhower met with the Galactic Federation of Worlds, and they signed an alliance. What happened was Alan Dulles, who was MJ1 of MJ12 group, they went behind his back, and they wanted technology. And the Nebu Greys, who the Galactic Federation tried to warn them about, they're sneaky little bastards, that they basically cut a deal behind Eisenhower's back. And so the agreement was to just have a few people abducted, but they broke that agreement. They abducted millions of people, and it's all part of their hybrid program. And this is why they had to have an amendment to the Prime Directive, because of the sneaky way that they were doing it. How they were doing it was they're abducting, women, impregnating them. They'd be pregnant, then they brought them back on, and they would have these hybrids, which, our government, part of the agreement was having facilities like in Dulce, New Mexico and elsewhere, that they had these huge facilities that were with these gray alien hybrids. And the idea was that the gray alien hybrids would be connected to the Hive Queen, which is an Orion. But fortunately, in the Galactic Federation, you have a Commander Denethor, who they were actually able to capture some of the gray aliens that originally met with Eisenhower, and they were able to capture them in stasis, because if they became awake, and they would connect back to the Hive Queen. They operate, like birds and insects and everything, have a hive mind.
It sounds like the Borg. It sounds like the Borg, Dan.
Exactly like the Borg. The Borg is the Orion Greys, and the Klingons are the Draco Reptilians, So, yeah, they're both portrayed in Star Trek. But anyway, what happened was he was able to connect into the link that was into the hive mind of the Queen, was able to hack it. This is incredible. He saved the entire galaxy, Commander Denethor, and was able to send a virus into the Queen. The Queen's dead. And so the entire Orion, which is huge, the entire dominion of the Orion Greys, they no longer have a hive mind queen. So now the Galactic Federation is kind of overseeing them. So now they're going back into a planetary matrix type of hive, where they're no longer controlled by this queen whose only objective was to, just like the Borg in Star Trek, is to expand and dominate and take over, and that
Assimilate.
exactly, assimilate. And so we no longer have the threat from the Orion Greys. The only threat, if you could call it that, is the Draco reptilians, which are pretty badass, but it looks like we have not only the Galactic Federation of Worlds, we have the Intergalactic Confederation here, which is huge with 500 motherships, each one holding, thousands of craft within it. You also have the Anunnaki, which, was basically split with Enlil and Enki, which Enlil was half reptilian, the other one was half human. And Enlil was the one that messed with our DNA so that we deteriorate, short, you go the whole history on that one.
The worker bee, so to speak.
But we also may have the Nigumak on our side, which is the nemesis of the Draco Empire, which they're scared shitless of them. And so but they're considering joining the Galactic Federation. So the Galactic Federation is all these different civilizations across the galaxy that have all joined together on an agreement that is based on the Prime Directive of, which is a moral, ethical directive that everyone's abiding by. And so if there's like a marauding ETs that are negative like that, they help eliminate those threats.
But now here's the next question regarding hybrids. Do you think
that
they
was
have
quite a load I put on?
No, but that's great. I was enjoying every moment, and hopefully everybody that's watching and listening is enjoying it as well. Do you think they perfected hybridization, that they're here, they look completely human, but they're hybrids?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's some of that. There's there's thousands of extraterrestrials walking among us.
That's what I mean. So this hybridization program has been going on for some time. You would think with their advanced technology, they pretty much perfected it by now. And they probably are walking amongst us. I'm just saying that hypothetically, but
they're thousands of years ahead of us. And this may blow your mind, Bill, but through Elena Danan, over a year ago, I connected with her, and she knew that I worked with Dr. Marcel Vogel, which is IBM's head scientist on quartz crystals and crystal technology.
Give out that website there before you continue about the crystal technology, because you do have there is a website that speaks about that.
Oh, marcelvogel.org in his honor, to carry on the research work. He was a pioneer in interface of consciousness with crystals. And so I did the show with Elena back over a year ago, and she said, well, Thorhan's younger brother, he's from the planet Era. He's going to a university in the Pleiades, and he's learning to be a star maker, terraforming planets. And so he has an intimate knowledge of creation, the matrix, and crystals and everything. And I said, well, what if I asked him some questions? So I started questions. Now we're at 111 pages of question and answer, which you can find on marcelvogel.org, of technology exchanges. And we've been able to open up the vortex inside of a crystal with a special crystal device that we use. And now I'm working with two scientific teams that are making a frill generator, which is using this technology is how they power their planets and how they power their starships. It uses the torsion fields of a specially cut crystal with specific geometries and these windings that are perpendicular of silver and copper that are pulsed at specific frequencies, alternated, that emit this frill energy that it's like a life force type energy. It's connected with source. And humans and plants benefit. So I'm looking at quantifying this and measuring it. If we're at the point where we're got the coil formed. It's a very complicated construction. Once we power it up, if we can quantify it and measure it, it'll be a gift from their world. Now, he has been authorized by the High Command of the Galactic Federation of Worlds to share this technology with me. And so it's a gift from their world to ours.
When you say from their world, is this something that's coming from vast distances or the possibility of interdimensional travel?
Well, the Pleiades, the
Yeah,
planet Era,
light years.
they're Palladians.
Okay.
The Palladians are one group. The Nordics, as they're called, are part of the Galactic Federation of Worlds, which is made up of a huge amount of different species. And what they're going to do is, they're the hot-looking ones, right?
Yeah.
Good-looking guys, good-looking girls, right? They're, people aren't going to have a problem, with, the multiple antennas and multiple eyes and everything, right? And so
You think?
they're going to,
You think?
they're going to ease it in. Eventually, we'll start to see the other species that look a bit different than us, but they're going to acclimate. We've been indoctrinated generationally for so many decades that we live in a kind of like a Truman Show reality that we don't really know.
No, you're right.
What
Even
you
science
saw
fiction
in
movies.
Science fiction
Exactly.
is nothing compared to what reality is.
It's funny you mentioned that. First of all, before I ask my next question, is there any human representation in Pleiades? Like they actually have people participating to learn from teachers, from these guides, these extraterrestrial
absolutely.
guides.
Well,
that they're
we
actually
have,
there, though, Dan. They're actually there participating.
Well, my friend Elena Danan, she's an emissary for them. She has direct communication. She has when they repurpose the implant, it's a military grade quantum communication device. And what she sees and hears, Thorhan sees and hears, and what Thorhan sees and hears, she sees and hears. And so that's how I communicate with Jenhan Aredian, his brother. She sees the document, they scan it, record it, play it back for his younger brother. He answers the questions and gives it back. But she has gone on board their craft a number of times off planet, and so she's taken on the task, and that's quite a task, to be an emissary for them, to communicate for them.
Dan.
And so it's quite. When you get into it, the message is quite hopeful.
But you just brought up another interesting point. If that capability exists, what's to say that AI will not serve the same purpose in humans to do the same thing? So, could AI technology be a derivative of extraterrestrial tech?
Well, AI is its own.
You know what I mean, though. Could
thing.
it be?
This is human technology, and they incorporate some artificial intelligence, of course, in order to do its function. So it's not a malevolent, out of control, become like
Data without his emotion chip. He went nuts. Well, when they put the chip in, actually, he got all emotional and went off the scales. But you know what I mean. Could AI be serving another purpose?
Well, there's all kinds of warnings about AI.
Yes,
that AI can get so far ahead that it could be, difficult. But that's for a whole another subject.
Yes. Now, getting back to it. So the whistleblower that spoke to Ross, he mentioned quite a few things, and it was like a cesspool of everything that's been spoken in ufology for decades. Like the murder of people by people, the murder of people by extraterrestrials. And also he was talking about a lot of the other subjects that are discussed in ufology all the time. But this is the thing that, a lot of it just sounded like too much, Dan. It was like everything that Ross asked him, he says, yes, this is going on. That's been going on. We have craft. We have alien bodies. Everything... that he just says yes. Everything is happening, which I found a little curious. It raised a couple of flags because it seemed like, wow, he's just yesing to every question. Now, don't get me wrong, the questions were probably prepared. He knew ahead of time what questions were going to be asked of him. I'm sure. I think it was well planned. But here's the thing: and I want your opinion on this with disclosure, because you mentioned this earlier, that they're eventually going to start showing up more. Is this all, again, a slow drip, 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 drip to the public for the inevitability? Now, disclosure may not occur through the government, but they're going to make it. So whether we have control of it or not, the eventuality is they're going to make their presence known. Now, my opinion is that that's a better outlook at things, because at least people are going to be like, oh, okay, we've been listening, we've been hearing about this. I think that, like you said, it will, they'll accept it a lot easier than right now. Breaking news in whatever country or wherever location, live coverage of extraterrestrial craft landing or hovering in such and such, where that kind of situation is going to freak people out. It's going to be so sudden. I think the preparation for something like that is probably already in place. Martial law, whatever it takes. But it's going to have such an immediate impact with social, financial, religious, political, financial. It's gonna
energy,
energy. Exactly. It's gonna create havoc.
Transportation.
I think it's
religion.
actually on purpose, Dan, that this is happening. I do. I think it's on purpose that they're doing the slow drip, drip, drip to prepare the masses. That's just my opinion.
Well, to put it in perspective, know that there is such a thing as, these white hats that are the Earth Alliance that have this extreme advanced technology that work in the secret space program, and they're working in alliance with the Galactic Federation of Worlds. In fact, they work together on liberating the Earth, the Moon, Mars, Ceres, elsewhere in our solar system of these regressive extraterrestrials. They work together, and so when the Galactic Federation of Worlds, which Thorhan was the representative that gave the disclosure plan to General Van Herk, this plan is not going to be like all of a sudden, boom, you're going to see aliens on TV. It's going to be, I'm sure it's going to be, keep in mind, these people are thousands of years in advance in understanding things, and that they would most likely, it would roll it out in such a way with the least psychological damage to the population of our planet, and in such a way, and they've made it clear that they're not here to save us, but they're here to assist us in us saving ourselves, and that we become awake and aware and take back control of our planet from these nefarious elements that have been deceiving humankind on this planet for a long time.
But what if one species is working with one country and another species is working with another country? Because that kind of narrative is going to come up, that they're being helped by this one. Now these are visiting the United States, but this group is working with Russia. This group is working with China. Or do you think it's going to be unified?
It's not haphazard like that. They are working together as the Galactic Federation. No one species is going to go doing something different that's not approved by the High Command. They do have a somewhat military structure like we have here on Earth, where they do have a High Command and a benevolent council that forms together, and that there's a somewhat of a rank situation where there's higher levels within there. But it's not going to be a haphazard. We have rogue aliens off doing something that's not in check.
I hate to throw it at you, Dan, but there were some rogue angels doing it, supposedly in the past too. The fallen angels. I'm just saying. You know what I'm saying. I mean, just because it sounds all great that there's a benevolent council and they're controlling everything that's going on, but that's not to say some of their subordinates might say, well, you know what, screw this. We're just going to do this.
And what was done back then that you're referring to about those rogue angels which was under the command of Enlil. He was playing Yahweh in the Bible. All the people wanting virgin girls and blood sacrifices and all this different sin, wiped out a lot of people. A lot different than what people call Jesus and Yeshua. A whole different being, right? And so you have these. You can imagine if you have advanced technology and you come to a primitive planet like this, you're going to be worshipped as a god
or a demon.
Yeah,
there's going to be people labeling as demonic.
And if you would experience some of these regressive beings, it would be indistinguishable from a demon, you could say. It would be very, very negative. And so, it's kind of like as above, so below. They say there's about 4.5% on Earth that are, psychopaths. And it's kind of like that out there in the galaxy. The vast majority are benevolent. There's just a certain percentage that are not. Fortunately, there's more good than bad out there.
By the way, you talk to people behind the scenes like I talk to people behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. The conversation that is private and we're told to not repeat in a public setting. Why I say that is because when we were talking about the Tic Tac, and you told that story about he said it's ours, U.S. technology, and then he changed the story.
Mike Tuber.
Yeah,
yes.
I was told about 5 years ago by a scientist that worked on engineering and our rockets and everything else that it was our technology and that the Russians had it too.
Yeah, no doubt.
So when I hear that it was a UFO, and I'm like, what a perfect scenario. The Nimitz is doing a drill. It's not armed. It's not live. And they're playing with it from the outside, from the perimeter, miles and miles away, to test it, to test their radar, to test the detection, see how it would respond. And to me, that's, in my opinion, that's what that was all about, to test
Princeton
the technology.
Had that advanced radar that they
exactly. That was rolled out. That's exactly right. So that's just my opinion. Now, was it reverse engineered from something else? That's a whole different issue. But I truly believe, from hearing from other sources, and I hate to use that word, that was ours. That was not extraterrestrial in nature.
Yeah. 24,000 miles per hour and 500 miles per hour when it's under the ocean.
Exactly. So, anyway, what's going on for you? What's coming up with you? You got anything planned? Any shows coming up with Dr. Sala? Like, what's on your...
I'm just talking to space aliens and making crystal technology. The usual.
Well, when things get hot again, because they're going to heat up again when the hearings... I don't think they're going to happen until the fall. I'd love to get your perspective and your opinion about it. I believe...
maybe I'll be able to demonstrate something to you.
That would be awesome. But I believe there's not just going to be Grush at the hearing. I think there's going to be other individuals sitting alongside of him at this hearing if it happens.
Which hearing is this, Bill?
They're supposed to... All right, so David Grush is the whistleblower that came out. News Nation had a special with Ross interviewing him for an hour this past Sunday. Though Dr. Greer had his own thing going on at the National Press Club on Monday, which oddly, I found some of the accounts of some of these individuals, and you've seen it. The gentleman that spoke about what's going on in the South Pole with the communication array underneath the ice.
Eric Hecker.
Yes.
I know him well, yeah.
And talking about that it's faster than light communication, and this is how we're doing it, and it's been active. I'm like, oh my gosh. And the other gentleman that said in Indonesia when he was there, he was on patrol and ran into some unmarked U.S., because they spoke English and they had U.S. weaponry. And this craft appeared and they told him, look straight or you're going to get shot. And they experienced something. And then I was told by someone yesterday that a very similar incident happened in South America. The same kind of stuff went on. But in this case, they were shackled and it was really bad. So,
what was his name? Weingart, one of our witnesses that was down in Peru. Craft came down, and the guys in black with no name tags or rank or anything says, we'll do you and your whole damn family. We'll drop you out of the helicopter, and the last you'll see of you. They're a very nasty group.
and then
it's been going on for a long time.
And then the other individual that's talking about going into an underground bunker or hangar and saw this device that was lifting up a slab of granite and rocks, but they were testing propulsion. That had to be a mechanism to make it to where it was anti-gravity and the thing was levitating off the ground. People are like, what does that have to do with UFOs? It has to do with the propulsion. It has to do with the makeup.
We've had it since the 1950s. It's just we're still using gasoline. We're still using nuclear power, coal. Polluting our planet with all this stuff. When we've had this stuff.
But Dan, if you're reverse engineering on some technology that you're just trying to learn and figure out, you're going to disassemble it and break it up into pieces to figure out how it all comes back together. How the components of it work. So it makes sense that they were working on one specific device that was used for probably part of the propulsion system and was levitating as some type of an anti-grav device. You would think, I'm sure they tested the metal separately. Like I said, they would break it up and try to figure out how does this thing come back together. So as a kid, I don't know if you did this, I would take stuff apart and then put it back together.
Yeah, reverse engineering operations been going on for decades.
So
as Dr. Greer said in the first, which the media cut off, he says, objects of extraterrestrial origin have been tracked on radar going thousands of miles per hour and stopping and making right-hand turns. And then they cut. And right after that, he says, and we have already figured out the propulsion systems in the United States, United Kingdom, elsewhere. We've got it, except there's rogue, illegal, according to Admiral Wilson, operations that need to, and crimes against humanity. Look at the human trafficking, the horrible things, millions of children, and going off planet as well. The drugs that they bring in to fund a lot of this stuff. Weapons sales, humans, drugs, weapons, big money makers.
Dan, do you think we'll see disclosure in our lifetime?
I'd like to see it this year.
I know, right? I don't know about that, but I think the inevitable it's going to happen. People may not.
Inevitable is going to happen. You can't give a date or time with this stuff because it's in dynamic flux and there's several variables that are happening. That it's a dynamic thing. But I think the consciousness of the public awakening to this reality is a key element. And the more people that become awake and aware, the more people, it's kind of like each one of us is like part of a fractal larger mind. And
do you think that's the majority or the minority? Because some are going to automatically assume it's false flag, psyop, fake, BS.
Well, at some point, I don't know how it's going to happen, but an emergency broadcast system comes out.
I was thinking of that too.
Starts giving an education to everybody of it has to be a psychological masterpiece of masterpieces, in order to take all of the people that have been, watching CNN, MSNBC, New York Times, all that.
Mainstream media.
And bring them to the actual reality that has been hidden, all these decades.
Well, hopefully, like you said, I am not expecting much, obviously, out of the hearings because of the classification.
Expect to see more craft in the sky.
That would
because that's
be
part of that we're going to see more and more of them are in cloaking, and we're going to that's going to be the start.
as long as it's not a story like the Vegas one. I don't know if you've seen that Las Vegas.
Yes, I saw.
Oh
it.
my gosh.
Who knows? Who knows? And there's also quite a thing called counter disclosure assets. I often wonder why Eric Hecker he's coming on and attacking Elena about one of the witnesses in Antarctica talked about the Germans leaving and the Chinese going in, and he says, "Oh, that's a lie. It's all." Well, and I said, "Well, show me your evidence. I'd like to see what you have." But he refuses to show me any evidence. So you can't really have a debate or a conversation if you don't have any information. But I'm always open to question anything, and everybody should question everything.
So how can people reach you if they want to contact you?
If you go to thewebmatrix.net, my email's there, and just research, educate yourself. I have references to all the stuff I have, and a lot of your group is pretty savvy. They do a lot of research, and so they know a lot of this stuff. But the group that we really need to reach is not the people that watch channels like this.
It's the people that are not informed, the public, the general public, which hopefully the mainstream media like News Nation and some other news outlets, Tucker's done it, puts the information out to the public. Mainstream media needs to be connected, but they have their own agenda-driven narrative, so I'm not confident. Maybe at some point, Dan.
Look how much of UFO buzz is happening right now in our media.
That's true.
It's like across the channels. There's so much people reporting things, and as I said, there's counter disclosure assets that are coming out with false information and attacking people. That what happens is you have people that come up with maybe 90% truth and 10% lie, and they're attacking people. And what happens is people don't know any better. They look at all this information, people conflicting and arguing amongst each other, and people just throw their hands up and they don't know what to believe. And that effectively hides the truth.
Absolutely. And that's why I say if it's all over the media, a lot of people are going to say, what's going on here? What's the agenda? What are they up to? Are they up to something? Because people are going to think that way. So
right. Things don't come out of the New York Times without an agenda.
And the thing is, how are you going to, and I don't want to say manipulate or to have folks that are watching take it for what it is, truth, when they're going to have these doubts running in their heads. That. It's going to be really hard to convince the public that this is real, no matter what you do. That.
You have to. You can't really tell people about this stuff. You have to show them unquestionable,
evidence,
undeniable proof. And when people see and experience it for themselves, and when it just there's no other, it just makes perfect logical sense. At that point, the person decides, yeah, I guess there is something. That makes sense. It all connects. When a person does that, it was like this one gay guy who was an extreme liberal, that the name was Brandon, that a family member said, CNN's like manipulating that information. And he said, oh, no, they're not, And they said, I'll show you. And so he dug in and researched, found they were manipulating the information, and then all of a sudden he turned around from being an extreme political view in one direction to going the exact opposite in the other direction. Now this whole political divide, racial divide, spiritual divide, sexual orientation divide, all of these different divisions that the mainstream media has a way of perpetuating,
right.
The way psychological think tanks that put together the information that controls the perceptions of the public is all used to hide the real enemy of the people, which is the ones that are manipulating the perceptions of the people and hiding the truth using deception.
Excellent. Well said, Dan. Dan, as always, a pleasure having you on here with all of us.
It's a pleasure, Bill. We kind of bent some ears on this one, huh?
Yeah, I think so, but I think we hit all the relevant points. But I definitely would like you to come back soon when some breaking news comes out. We'll touch upon it, and I'll reach out. And please send your wife my love. And for those that don't know, Dan, I don't want to say, he lives in the state of Oregon. Right? It's Oregon, right, Dan?
Yeah, I live
He's
off the grid.
You have to see. You have to see his place. It is outstanding. It's beautiful. They're off the grid. They're like on a mountain, away from everything. That's the life that he and his wife live. It's awesome. You have no idea, folks. And hopefully one day I get to go to Oregon and visit you guys myself and hang out.
You're always welcome, Bill.
Yeah, that would be awesome. So, Dan, blessings to you, the family, and we'll do this again soon. So thank you very much for coming on for an hour and a half or so. And look forward to doing this again and also getting you on some of the shows on KGRA-DB as well. You did great on the MUFON What's Up show with Chris, Katie, and Tara.
That was fun, yeah.
So, again, thank you, Dan, so much. It was a pleasure having you here, and we'll be in touch, I'm sure. And if anything comes up, hit me up, and if I find out anything, I will definitely contact you. So, again, thank you so much for coming on tonight for a few minutes.
It's a pleasure, Bill. We'll do it again.
All right, Dan, you have a great night.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So that was Dan Willis. And believe me, we've been talking for almost an hour and a half, and we could talk forever. I just didn't, I can't keep the guy on for on and on and on. But I think we touched on a few interesting topics. And it's sensitive. It's a lot of people might see it as being way out there. How would I say this? Not believable. But when you talk to individuals like Dan and the information, what they're privy to from other people within, that's just like, it really is true. What the public knows is nothing in so many different areas, but is nothing for what's really going on behind the scenes. And I try to hint that from time to time. I wish I could say names, but I can't. When I was told, and Dan touched upon this, because he knows it's U.S. technology, the Tic Tac, and so do I. How do I know? Talk to the scientists that were involved in the development of the technology. And, you're sworn to secrecy, not to repeat or reveal. Now, I was given permission to talk about the Russian scientist that was he was teaching in university in Finland, and Moscow sent agents and swooped him up and took him back to Moscow and took all his work. And he's been doing a lot of research in propulsion. I think it's anti-gravity. And they just went in and took all his stuff, and I guess he was interrogated for a couple of months and finally released again. So who knows? Let's see. Yeah, no, I get it, David. I get it totally. And that's why I said a lot of people are going to watch and say, this is way out there. This is far-fetched. And he understands that. But this is some of the things that are going on behind the scenes that this happens. Now, I can't say. I haven't experienced it. It's just like any other thing. But Dan is he's a great guy, and I know him for a long time. And I got to say, that man knows quite a bit. that a lot of other people may not. Now, I've spoken to people in the past. Like there's someone from Czech that I communicate with her often. She doesn't speak English, and she claims she's in communication with an extraterrestrial. Her name is Leona, and she sends me stuff all the time of what's going on. Now, I'm a very busy person, so it's difficult for me to exactly. That's why I said it was not live fire, Charles. They knew that was a drill, and that was a perfect time to do it. Something also happened more south of the location, but and the Catalina Islands. There's a whole bunch of stuff with that case. But well, when stuff happens, I'll bring Dan back, and actually, I'm in the works of creating a panel. And I've approached the idea with a few. I actually have a few ideas rolling in the head, but I'm not going to give it away here because people are watching, and they'll steal my ideas. So I'm not going to repeat it here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to end this stream so it saves as a standalone Dan Willis interview. And then I'll be back in like 15 minutes to hang out. But I want to thank Dan Willis again for coming on for 90 minutes or so. And look forward to having him on again. And I'm going to bring more people on. And I may bring on some people that will talk about things that you don't normally hear about. That's the plan. It depends on how much they want to talk about. You know, it's how much they're going to reveal in a public forum. But I think we need a special show. How about a panel discussion with Commander Cobra, Don Ecker, Chris DiPerno. I can be the narrator and the mediator and the moderator at the same time. And we get a whole bunch of individuals. We'll get a skeptic on. You know, we'll make this pretty balanced. People from different areas. You know, we'll bring a scientist on. I'm thinking of Dr. Brandenburg. Get him on. Bring on Mark. And just get like 8 individuals. And let's just do it. Let's talk about disclosure. Let's talk about the possible agenda driven behind disclosure. Whether it's peaceful or otherwise. Because I think it's a fair thing to say, very fair thing to say, that who knows?
Where was the Doritos that you told me you got me?
I didn't buy you any Doritos, Mom. And I have to end this interview. So I'll be with you in a minute, Mom. But again, I think a lot of people in the public are saying, is this a psyop? Is this part of a false flag? Is this a globalist agenda-driven narrative? You know, you're going to have all that going on. Then there's the other people that are going to say, listen, this is real. This is happening. And we have to figure out a way how to roll this out to the public without the whole world set on fire. So, and then there's the stuff in the middle. But those are like the two sides. But we're definitely going to work on something. I think the best time to have that panel discussion is after the next hearing. Now, based that they're going to be going on vacation soon, of course, because they seem like they always go on vacation in Congress. And they'll take their little summer vacation, and they won't come back till mid-September or whatever it is. So I don't think nothing is relevant is going to happen until the fall. It would be nice if it happened sooner, but I highly doubt it. Because come July, it's bye-bye. And they're already packing their stuff to go on vacation. So I don't see nothing happening in the next few months. I will say that it seems like they're prepared. Now, like I told Dan, my opinion, the whistleblower was so out there on so many things. It was like a yes man. This happened. This is going on. They did this. This is happening. This. I was like, what? This is like a ufologist researcher's gold mine. He's agreeing to everything that's everybody's ever questioned and brought up as a possibility, a theory. I'm like, oh my God. So that raised a lot of flags for me. If one of them is true, I mean, that could be big. But he's saying everything's been going on. And I got to the point where I was almost laughing. That's not a good thing. Because it just sounded way, way, way too unbelievable. Anyway, I'm going to stop the stream now. Come back in 15 so that this can save. So for those that were watching for the Dan Willis interview, I want to thank you all. And I'll be back on the next stream in about 15 minutes. So to